Charles Burton is a former Canadian diplomat and political science professor at Brock University, joining us now with more. Good to have you on the program today.
Hi, Todd.
There is a lot going on here, and I was outlining it there on a number of different fronts. And this Canadian diplomat, the Americans getting involved, this woman in Vancouver. Your take on what's happening?
Well, I think it's clear that the Chinese government very, very much wants Ms. Meng to be returned to Beijing. And I think there are a couple of levels for this. For one thing, she's a very senior person in the Chinese communist regime, and clearly they don't want a precedent to be set that other members of the regime could be subject to arrest because of allegations of serious crimes committed against the United States. And I think the larger issue is really if she does go to the United States, where she is facing multiple charges of serious fraud and violation of the United States sanctions against Iran at that period, that she might go state's evidence and provide the U.S. government with a lot of information about the Huawei company's connections with the Chinese state and the use by the Chinese state of these large Chinese firms to serve China's general geopolitical and geostrategic concerns with regard to knowing more about telecommunications infrastructure, which could be useful if there was a conflict between China and another country, and of course to use the telecommunications infrastructure that Huawei puts in for purposes of espionage. So, you know, there's an enormous pressure on the Chinese diplomats in Canada to get Ms. Meng back, and the government has engaged in an extremely vindictive and, as reported earlier, arbitrary arrest of a former Canadian diplomat on leave from the Canadian Foreign Service who's involved in conflict resolution, trying to seek solutions, working for this NGO to conflict in the region. And he is someone who is known to us in in the Foreign Service circle, who would be known and liked as a friend by the people who are currently being engaged by the Chinese government in Ottawa, in the China Division of Foreign Affairs, to try and resolve the Meng matter. And I think we have grievous concern that he's been taken into an extrajudicial incarceration facility by the Chinese Ministry of State Security, where he will be subject to torture and interrogation to force a confession from him under duress.
Right. And so can I ask you, this obviously puts the Canadian government in a very tricky situation. First of all, a lot of pressure from China to release this woman in Vancouver, pressure from the United States not to do that and to have her extradited. That will take, in all likelihood, months, as you know, Charles, spilling into 2019. So this story is not going to go away. Now you have this Michael Kovrig man who is in Chinese custody. I mean, what options, what good options does Ottawa actually have here?
Well, I don't think there are any good options. I mean, this has been inflicted on us by the United States. You know, we respect international law and our treaty obligations, including the extradition treaty that Canada has signed with the United States. When they requested that Ms. Meng be put into custody, we really had no choice but to comply with that request. Now, as you say, there'll be a protracted period where the Canadian judicial system assesses whether it's justified for Canada to extradite Ms. Meng to face the charges that the U.S. is leveling against her. There will be a long period of appeals. Whichever result comes out, it's bound to be badly taken by one side or the other. Certainly, if Ms. Meng is returned to Beijing, I think that will have a very negative impact in the United States and could affect the prospects of congressional ratification of the USMCA. If Ms. Meng remains in Canada for a long period, I think there will be continuing pressure on Canada to release her, to the exclusion of all of the other matters that we would like to engage the Chinese government on, including trade, international multilateral matters like climate change, consular cases. Just everything that we do with China is going to be overshadowed by the Chinese government's desperation to get Ms. Meng back to Beijing before she's in the hands of the Americans.
Charles Burton joining us from Brock University in St. Catharines. He himself is a China expert. Wonderful to have you on CTV with us again, Charles. Thank you for taking some time today.
Good to speak with you.